I was pushed through the light, into the light. This isn't something that I was walking and I like ran through the light. It's much more socially acceptable for me to be an alcoholic than it is for me to be transgender. I'm going to go to hell because of I'm trans. And I practice putting, and taking a dirt nap. I can either die or transition. I was free of my body. All the souls of everybody that's ever lived is in there. I transitioned from male to female. You might be surprised how many veterans there are that are transgender. And it doesn't have to be about gender. I mean, it could be someone's gay or lesbian.
Is it about the near-death experience, or is it about all the reasons that you're trans? Welcome everyone to Our Sliver of Time. Today we have a very special guest, Kailey Sweeney, who has had a near-death experience. As always, we're going to have some follow-up questions as well. First and foremost, Kailey, thank you so much for coming on.
You're quite welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
What led to this near-death experience in the first place?
Sepsis.
Sepsis.
Yeah. Okay. So I had a procedure to try to drain an infection that was in my abdomen. Following the procedure, I got an acute sepsis. So that's the infection is in my bloodstream. The result of that is that I started having difficulty breathing, and over a period of probably 24 hours, I went from just being on oxygen to eventually being on a respirator. But what was happening is my aoli had started bleeding. They call it a cytokine storm or septic shock. My body's own immune system was revved up to try to fight off the infection. So my lungs filled with blood. I drowned it in my own blood. I'm there at the hospital, so they're able to take care of that. But my vitals dropped. I didn't have oxygen going to my brain, and I had respiratory failure.
What did you see during your near-death experience? Like, what was that like?
Oh, I saw a lot, and there's really more to it than what I've even been able to talk about in any one setting, because I just don't want to take too much time on it.
Well,
But
by all means, if you want to set any premise foundation, feel free to tell it the way you would like to tell it.
okay,
So I'd like to give you that opening, if you
okay,
want to.
that's fine. I've come to understand that when people die, that the immediate experience that you have following whatever it is that led to your body stop functioning, your heart stops, you stop getting oxygen to your brain. The experiences you have is whatever you need to help you transition to the other side. Some people need to see relatives. Many people have a life review. I didn't have a life review. Some people meet Jesus on the other side, or some or angels. My experience was personal to me. Without knowing my background, I think the near death experience itself doesn't make as much sense.
Okay, and I do want to say very quickly, I can relate to a certain extent how you're kind of saying some near-death experiencers have, life review XYZ. Um, in my near-death experience, it was quite brief. A lot of those things I didn't have at the time. So I understand. So there's no right or wrong answers. It sounds like you want to provide kind of a background to it, so by all
I'll
means.
be as brief with it as I can, although it's like my entire life up until I was 47 years old. But I'll make it as brief as I can. So
That's okay.
the
It's your
the the,
it's
the
your
over
sliver
the
of time.
over the overarching theme here is that 1 year following my near death experience, I transitioned from male to female. And it's because of my near death experience, because I had never felt like something that I could do. I thought that it was a mortal sin and that I would spend eternity in hell if I did that. And so I lived a very tortured life, especially in, say, the 5 or 6 years leading up to my near death experience. I can say that my earliest experiences having what's called gender dysphoria. That is just the knowledge or feeling that you're in the wrong body, living existing in the wrong gender, is when I was in kindergarten. And so I have a story to that, but it's okay. In my early life, I was drawn to the feminine. I came from a Christian family that was, not overly religious. I mean, some are, we went to church every Sunday, but it wasn't like my parents restricted what kind of music I could listen to or what kind of books I could read. I went to public school, so a lot of things. Some families are very very strict. Mine let me participate in the world, but I did tell my parents that I wanted to take ballet and I wanted to be a ballerina when I was in kindergarten, just because of that's what the girls in my kindergarten class were doing. And so I wanted to be and do what they were doing. Well, that didn't happen. Instead, very soon I got signed up for football, which I really, really hated. I didn't like getting hit. Um, Also had a couple experiences just getting beat up in the bathroom when I was in elementary school. Some I wasn't. It's funny. I wasn't particularly effeminate. I mean, not overly. Not like I had, like my voice was different or anything. I didn't move like I was effeminate, but something that other boys would pick up on made them make accusations that I would say, yeah, they said, you're gay or that, you're a fag or whatever. And I mean, I was like, I didn't know what in the world they were talking about, really. I got hit and kicked when I tried to get to the bathroom, which made for a very uncomfortable period of time when I was in elementary, from kindergarten to fourth grade. So I learned to adapt, and I tried to live the role that I was supposed to do, of being a boy. And that's what I did my entire life, really. I would dress when my mom and dad would leave me alone at home. Sure, I would raid my mom's closet, and it was for me, that was my play. It was trying on her clothes and looking in the mirror and thinking about, oh, I'm so cute. I like this outfit. I like these shoes. Trying some makeup on and go, oh, I like that. So I did have some chance to explore it, but not very much. And it was even part of my faith journey. When I was really young, I tried to pray that God would let me be a girl just for one day. I think it was probably third or fourth grade. I remember walking to my mom's car, and it was something during that day that had really triggered me. And I said, let me be, I can just be a girl, know what it'd be like to be a girl just for one day. I'll spend a day in hell. So I knew it was wrong. I had in my head that it was wrong because I related that, that life to damnation. I just wanted to experience, I just wanted to know just for a day what I would feel like. How differently would I feel? And well, the closest I got was trying on clothes. But with that came a lot of shame. With that came a certain amount of self-loathing. I didn't know anybody who was transgender. This is the 70s and 80s. It's not like today where there's social media and you can find people all over the place. There wasn't anything. I didn't have a name to what I was feeling. I didn't have a name to what I thought this condition was, or how I felt. So I was like alone in that. And the only thing that I did feel is that it was wrong. It was very wrong. And as I got older, I started to understand why, as my knowledge of, say, scripture grew and that kind of thing. In college, I actually started a Christian magazine. I thought I was such a sinner that I tried to overcompensate. In college, it was starting this evangelism effort of trying to start a magazine. And then I got out of college, I got married, had a family. I still felt the same things, but I didn't communicate it, and my hopes were that I would outgrow it, that someday it would just go away. My parents then would have been for it to go away. That I don't want to have to deal with it. So I had a family, and even with that, I still had the feeling that was just wrong. And so I had an opportunity to start studying for ministry. Basically, my church set up its own little seminary, and I went through that. It was convenient. It was a conservative Anglican Catholic church, very very high church with bells and incense and a lot of ceremony investments and really beautiful music. It was a beautiful service, but still biblically very conservative, theologically conservative. They only had male clergy. Women really didn't even serve at the altar. So here I am having the feelings that I had going into this conservative church. For me, I think that's like some trans people go into that are from my era or a decade or two before. They This is my dog. If something happens, my dog is over here just turned over my
It sounded
uh
like a bookshelf fell over. So
no, he just turned over my router. My router fell off my desk onto the floor, and I was afraid I was gonna lose you. He's over
it's
there pressed against me, and he's wrapped around his neck. So if he takes
it's
off,
a moment of beautiful chaos.
yeah, hold on a second. Come back. I don't know what that is. There's something about my dog and technology. He's chewed cell phones of mine before.
What kind of dog, you mind me asking before
Um,
we
he's an Australian Shepherd.
Oh, wow. Beautiful dog, yeah.
Yeah, he's a pretty dog.
Awesome.
Anyway, what I was saying is, as I've gotten older, I've met obviously more transgender people who are also transgender, and a lot of them went into the military. You might be surprised how many veterans there are that are transgender. I run a support group, a local support group. I was having a meeting, and it was like 6 or 7 of us at the table, and it was like me and one other person who were the only people who were like never in the military. Everybody else had served. And so I think there's something about wanting to overcompensate about being hyper masculine. And for me, because I had this deep seated like sense of being so sinful, it wasn't that I was trying to be so masculine. It's like I need to become a saint. That's basically was my thought. I had to become, if I don't become a saint, I'm gonna go to hell because of I'm trans. So anyway, that's enough introduction for that. I mean, that's a lot. I have a lot of stories from that, and I've told some of them in some of these other settings, but I'll leave those for that. So by this time that I'm having my near death, you have to realize I've gone in the ministry full time. I'm at a small church. I live in a house that the church owns. My wife and daughter are with me. We're in a small rural community, where everybody knows one another. The idea that I would come out as being transgender would be the biggest scandal in the world. It would be the worst thing in the world. So in the time leading up to my near death experience, I would do anything to overcome the feelings that I had. I had turned to alcohol, I tried to become an alcoholic, and it didn't take. It's like, so okay, it's much more socially acceptable for me to be an alcoholic than it is for me to be transgender. So over Christmas one year, it's like I spent the entire day drinking, and I went to functions where I was drunk. I went to fundraisers where I was, and it was bad. It was bad. But at the end of it, I was like, it didn't satisfy me. It didn't make me feel any better. I felt worse. And
See, that might be, sorry to cut you off. That might be a blessing in disguise, because
oh, I know. I was trying to bury it somehow, so I didn't become addicted. So the next thing was like, okay, my thoughts got even darker. I went from there to thinking I can't get rid of these feelings. It was a really, really dark time and state for me. I had started going to therapy, thankfully, because I knew that I had an issue. But once I had come out to somebody, my therapist, it's like letting the genie out of the bottle. I couldn't put it back in. Whatever feelings I had went in the hyperdrive. I felt like I can either die or transition to live as, Kailey, to live as a woman.
I hope you don't mind me interjecting. I'm going to save a lot of questions for after, but
Sure, that's great. Go ahead.
just while we're on this topic, so you had mentioned practicing suicide and stuff, and I'm really
Yeah.
trying to handle this with care here. My question is, was the reasoning behind that in hindsight, do you think that was because you wanted to be a woman, so badly that it was making you upset?
I felt like my shame level of shame was so high that I felt like I was projecting. Okay. It wasn't reality. I was projecting. I was projecting and imagining a future where I would come out and live as a woman, and the embarrassment that my family, that my wife and daughter would feel in my community, that I would just lose my family and their lives would be ruined because of what I did, and it would just make the world miserable for everybody. And so, like, I thought it'd be more socially acceptable to be drinking. I thought, well, it'd be more socially acceptable and cause less damage to my family if I just killed myself. That's what I was feeling.
Okay. I figured while you were on the topic, like I said, I wouldn't have brought it up myself, but because you were on it. So I appreciate the answer.
Yeah.
And then I think I've sidelined us. My apologies.
No, no, no. I mean, this is part of the story. It's the amount of despair that I was in. I mean, it was a daily exercise. Some people will wake up in the morning. You'll have affirmations about. You'll listen to music when you work out to help pump you up. I don't know. People that have different morning routines. Mine was something like going and looking in the mirror and going, "You are a GG piece of shit." And the only reason that you have it yourself is because you're too afraid. You're a chicken. You need to go and do this. Take care of it. Your family would be better off without you. You'll be happier without you. I mean, that was whenever I would see myself in a mirror and I would look at myself, I would have something. That was my internal dialogue, horribly self destructive. And I practiced putting, how I might end up not breathing anymore ever and taking a dirt nap. I had a plan. I practiced the plan. I was training myself, you see. I did it almost every day. I would practice what I was going to do. So that when I finally decided to do it, it would just seem routine. It's like, oh, it's just another day. I'm gonna do this and that's gonna happen. And then so when I finally did that, I wasn't like distraught. It was just like, okay, today's the day. I had a failed attempt. I want to get into all the details, but basically I decided I wanted to live. I wanted to live. And by wanting to live, I said, damn it, I need to be myself. It's not worth this. What I'm doing here is not living. I might be physically alive, but this is no life. This is no life for me. And so I decided I would try to do something so that I could transition. And what I saw was the biggest obstacle to that was my job. I come out in the church and I'm living in this house that they're providing for my family. The interesting thing is, we're on the street. Well, probably realistically, they wouldn't be on the street immediately. Probably would have just been me. Probably would have just been me. But as I researched different jobs, and one thing that I settled on was working as a chaplain in a medical setting. I would still be in ministry. It would be in a kind of setting that is more open to different sexualities than the where I was working, and I was good at pastoral care. That was what I enjoyed, visiting my parishioners. I had been beside many people and their family members when they passed away. So it was kind of a natural thing for me to want to do. I applied for a program, a local program, and I was accepted, right, to this program that would train me so that eventually I could work at. So I had a plan. I was working the plan, and then I started to get sick. Like the first week, in the first and second week of the program, we had to have blood tests, right, to see if we had tuberculosis. Though we didn't have anything that we would pass along to people that we were going to go visit that were in nursing homes, and mine came back that there was something there. So I was going to go back for a second blood test. But then I found that I had a mass. I could feel it. It was very painful. It got to be pretty big. It made it hard to drive. It was in an area that just made it hard for my leg to push the gas pedal or the brake pedal sitting because of where it was. You know, your body's it because it crunched that up and it just hurt. It just hurt.
Is this in like the abdomen area? Is that what it is?
I'll say it's in the urinary tract area.
Okay. I didn't know that. I thought you were talking about your stomach, honest to God.
I know it's hard. It's hard for me to. Okay, I'll I'll just say it. I've never said this. Hold on. It was a testicle,
So, damn. Okay. So,
and
how
it got to be like from normal size, like the size of my fist. It was inflamed, as purple as a prune.
wow.
So you can imagine trying to sit or stand. And I thought, what in the world of all things? And if you're sick from that, you don't think that's something that'll kill you.
Now, does this correlate? I'm very curious about this. Does this correlate to you said something about your near death was caused by sepsis? Is there any correlation here?
This is where it's going.
Okay.
You know, I look back and I think, well, maybe this is the way that the universe or God was telling me that, you know what, you're not really supposed to be masculine. Time for the boys to go. Anyway, forgive me. I'm looking at me, I get so red.
Hey,
Oh,
we have fun here. We have fun.
yeah, okay, that's good. All right. So the surgery, so I had someone drive me to the hospital. I mean, I was in so much pain that I was like having heart palpitations, and my blood pressure was up, and it was just excruciating. I had a stent put in the drain all of the fluid that was in it so that could return to normal. And they put me on antibiotics. But for some reason, after the surgery, I got sepsis and it affected my ability to breathe. They put a CPAP on me or try to push air into my lungs. At that point, I was having so much trouble breathing that I knew I was going to die. I hear this sometimes that people that are going to die before they die, they know what's going to happen. I thought I just have a little bit of time, and I had a camp coming up at school. I called them and I canceled the camp. I remember I called them. I was like, "I'm gonna have to cancel camp this year because I'm going to be dead." I mean, I really thought that was the case. I called trying to find someone to give me last rites. My bishop. There was a priest who came to give me last rites. I know the Roman Catholic Church doesn't call it last rites anymore. It's like reconciliation. The priest that was ordained the same day that I was in the same church drove from the other side of the state to see me and get there before I stopped breathing. I confessed my sin to him that I had always wanted to be a woman, that I had many opportunities where I had dressed like a woman. I mean, I had lied about when somebody found evidence of what I had been doing, whether it was my parents, whether it was my wife. I lied about it. I did these things behind their back. And I confess that as my sin, right? He granted me absolution. The idea is that you're supposed to be sorry for your sin, that you'll turn around and you'll sin no more. My thoughts were if I had a chance to live, if I had a chance to live again, I would still feel the same way. So really, I didn't give a good confession because I didn't have a contrite heart of saying I was going to go sin no more. It's more like I'm giving a deathbed confession, literally hoping that I can eke out salvation because of my deathbed confession. I didn't think that that's the way that it works, and still don't think that that's the way that that works.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You used to actually work as someone that would listen to confessions. Is it,
Yes,
that's true? I
yes,
assume there's an oath that you're not supposed to tell, people's confessions. I'm not going to ask you what people
correct.
would
That's right,
say.
absolutely.
I'm curious, being in that position, what does that do to you mentally? Without going into specific confessions, are people telling you crazy stuff that makes you kind of look at everyone a little bit wild, or was it not that bad?
No, I was hearing confessions from devout church members who were mostly older, right, of a different generation even than myself. It was nothing that just made me go, no murders, no abuse, none, nothing that made me see somebody really, really different.
Yeah, and I'm just curious, did that have any effect on you mentally? But I suppose it wasn't that bad.
Is still a burden. Here's the thing: I had even become a little bit of a confessor for the community. There are people who were outside of my church who would still come to me and confide in me. The things that I would hear from there were more than what I heard from my own congregation. People didn't have anywhere to go. I had deathbed confessions from other people.
You're staring death in the face. I could only imagine your internal monologue. You have a priest come out to give your last rites or whatever they call it. And your deathbed confession is that you always wanted to be a woman. This was attributed, this was combined with some sort of guilt or something like this. Fast,
Shame, deep seated shame.
fast forwarding to today, like, has there been a change in mentality where you could say, you know what, perhaps it's not that big of a deal if I want to dress this way and all this stuff? Yeah, you're doing fantastically, right? You're comfortable in your own skin. Like, has there been a revelation to say, you know
A
what?
revolution, Dave. A revolution.
What's the revolution?
The revolution is a revelation. Let me talk about the near death.
Okay.
So I don't know how much time passed between having the priest come and visit me and when I had the near death experience. I don't think it was a very long period of time, probably a matter of hours. I remember my last breaths as my breath got shallower and shallower, and my body needed oxygen. It means like if you run really, really fast and you can't breathe fast enough to give your body oxygen, or you go underwater and you're holding your breath and you come up and you go, or the way you're feeling when you're underwater, and you're holding your breath and you have to go up or you're going to breathe, right? My entire body felt that way and it was screaming for oxygen, and I could just take little. I was like that, and my body wanted oxygen, and I couldn't get any. I couldn't get any until eventually I blacked out, and that's when things began. I wasn't getting enough oxygen to my brain, so I got tunnel vision. In my peripheral vision, it started going black, and the black just closed in until it was just a little straw, and then all black, nothing. I still had thoughts as I was going into that space. And you talked about internal dialogue. My internal dialogue was this is it. I'm going to die.
Did you have any preconceived notions of what would happen when you die? I know you said in the past you were afraid to go to hell because of, the religious beliefs when you grew up and the way that you were living. At that point, was a concern of yours? Did you have any notion of what was going to happen when you actually die?
Um, I mean, there's enough scriptural references that I thought that I had some idea, but not really. My thoughts on top of the knowledge of my own death was that I was going to hell. I said, this is it. And what I was doing spiritually, whatever part of me was there, is I was resigned myself to it. It's like, okay, it wasn't anything that I could fight. I had no way of fighting it. And so I just, at some point they had sucked the fluid out of my lungs, had been, had ventilated me, and they were working on that and trying to get my vitals up. But I didn't have any idea what's going on there. What I experienced is that I was in a room that had people in the room. I went from black to like this knowledge that people were in a room with me. There's a hallway. I felt like I was in a wheelchair or in the bed or something, the hospital bed. And they started pushing me down this hallway. It was just a long, dark hallway. It did have doors on it on the other side. I don't know what they were. I don't know where they go. There were people guarding the doors. There were men like looked like they were like Secret Service agents or something. It was wild. It was wild. It was wild. As I'm going down this hallway, I'm not thinking that I'm going. This is my hair. This is my stairway to heaven. I'm thinking this is my journey until I get to where I'm going to burn. Basically, the only thing that I knew to do was I knew this prayer called the Jesus prayer. It's 11 words. It's very simple. I'd say, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And I would at that point I would just shorten it. I was just, Lord, have mercy. Christ, have mercy. Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy. And I'm thinking this as I'm going down, figuring I'm going to go down, go down. And at the very end, there was the light, right? I did see the light. I was pushed through the light into the light. This isn't something that I was walking and I like ran through the light. At that point, I wasn't feeling like I have all this love and joy. This was like my resignation, right? And after I went through the light, I found myself in the hospital room, and I was looking down at myself. I was just there a split second, and what I did know that I was doing, it seemed like what I was doing, is going up through the different floors of the hospital. I mean, there were like two, three, or four floors above wherever I was. And I thought as I go through them, through the top of the roof, seeing the hospital going away. Is Williamsburg. I know, I was from the area. I knew what Williamsburg looked like. I saw Williamsburg going away, like I'm leaving the ground, like I'm on a rocket ship going up. As I'm going up, I see Virginia, then the United States, like it's a globe, and I see the whole world, like I'm pulling away from a globe, like I'm going into outer space. That was cool. I started hearing cheering, just like a soccer game or a football game, and the home team just scored, and the crowd is just going wild cheering. I look up to see where is all this sound coming from. And what I saw was, I love to say, well, it's a cloud or it was a spiral going up, and it was kind of a spiral. But my immediate perception, this is an infinite stadium with all the souls of everybody that's ever lived is in there. As I'm going up, as other people are coming up from the earth that have passed, that are coming up to join them, they're welcoming us. They're cheering for us. It's there that you start to feel this energy of love and welcome and warmth and expanse. It's hard to put it in words, really, because there's really nothing earthly that's like it. A few things about my body. I was free of my body. I didn't have any pain. I didn't have any needs. Everything that I possibly could have needed was just there. All of the things that I had been afraid of, they were gone. My mind, that right now was, I presume, in some respects, held in this like biological brain, these different nerve cells, it wasn't dependent on that. I wasn't dependent upon my eyes to see or my ears to hear. I was out without bodily limitation, and I'm flying. I'm soaring, weightless. I also hear, it sounds silly. I said booing, but boo, boo, and that's not it. That seems that seems banal for what was actually going on. But I'm hearing this same kind of thing. If the other team scores, they're disapproving of it and they're vocal about that. And I'm like, why? And in fact, there was some wailing. And it's really timely, actually, for us to have this interview because of some of the things that occurred. I led a really, really privileged life. And I'm very thankful for having a loving family and a good childhood. I'm not sure that I really knew the face of evil, right? They were responding to things that were going on the earth. I could see that they were, how you can look at when you look at somebody's eyes, you can tell what they're looking at. They were looking at the earth. I looked at the earth, and this sphere that's the earth, or I know it's wider, it's like equator. It was flat, and it filled the whole bottom area of the stadium, I guess.
You had said in the past that during your near-death experience, you saw a murder, you saw serial in the
Now,
hospital. This is
this
during
is
that
it.
time?
This is it. Yeah, this is it. You see, I was able to perceive things that were going on simultaneously all over the world. And some of the things that I had kind of zoomed in on were like a stabbing one place, a drowning another place. As I've come back, I've kind of wondered, is there somebody in a lake somewhere that if I knew where that was, I could go find them? I don't know. Probably not. The one thing that I knew the locale definitely was Syria. It was weird that the Syrian government fell this week, because the one thing that I heard the biggest response from was I saw a building that had women and children in it that was delivering some kind of humanitarian aid to them. I figured must have been a hospital, probably a hospital, maybe a school. I'm not exactly sure what kind of building it was. The Assad regime or Russia or somebody dropped bombs on the roof and collapsed the building on the women and children. And there was absolute just moaning in heaven for these women and children that were deceased. Just the amount of hate that would cause someone to want to murder innocents on a mass scale. I saw what hate can do, what evil is. And it hurts the hearts of the people that are on the other side. And it hurt me, free from, at that point, I was free from all the need and all of the despair that I had been feeling. I wasn't experiencing that anymore. I still wasn't exactly sure what I was experiencing until, a few moments later. I knew that love is what mattered at that point. It's like I existed in a pure state of love, so much love that it has consciousness, like it has its own energy, becomes a remnant of the person that I was. It pained me to see what people would do to one another. And so then I started going up, and I'm like the other people that are there, that are observing. I never joined the crowd that are in the stadium. I was always kind of hovering, like, this is the earth down here, and the stadium's like this. And there's souls that are going up, and I'm kind of hovering in there. And I look up, as because the stadium goes up and up and up and up. But at some point I saw a balcony. The doors of this balcony opened. A woman in a long white gown with her head covered to the point that I couldn't see her face. I really couldn't see her face. But she was wearing a crown, and she had roses around her neck, and she had, I think it was 12 courtiers, like people that walk out with her. They would come out and they fan out, and she walks out, and it's silence. It'd been all this like response of what's going on in the earth, and it's silence, and every head bowed to her. And I got a little glimpse of her face. Really, all I could tell is that it's glowing, it's emitting light, and it had deep set eyes and cheekbones, thin lips, and I can't tell much more detail of that. It was definitely human female, beautiful, but with this penetrating light. Then I started hearing the voice. She didn't speak. No one was moving their mouth. I didn't see any mouths moving. It was like coming from everywhere at the same time, a voice. If you've heard like a waterfall, the voice is like the voice of a waterfall, like running water, but you still could hear it as a voice.
What is this voice saying? Is it anything that you were able to interpret?
Oh, I was getting ready to tell you.
Oh, gotcha. My bad.
First, and this is what clues me that this is Virgin Mary, Mary. The voice says, "Fear not, don't be afraid." I mean, at that point, I wasn't really super afraid because I wasn't like burning, but still, this is an overpowering experience. It said, she said, the voice said, "You're not going to die, and I'm not going to send you to hell." It said, "I don't damn people," and this is to me like it's sounding like speaking with the authority of God. Remember, her mouth isn't moving, so I'm not like hearing it from her, even though I see her and her presence gives me comfort, and I'm feeling an enormous sense of love and belonging. It said, I made you. I made you to be who you are, and I don't damn you for being who you are. You feel the way that you felt in your life because I made you with a purpose. She said, I don't damn people for loving who they love or for being like like you. I know you and I love you just as you are. I love you. The church, and I think this is really speaking to all religions, has people in them who want control. And so they say and do things in my name to control people, to keep them down, to keep them fearful of burning in hell. And it makes me angry, the things that they do and say in my name. The next thing that I heard is, so you're going back and you have a mission. And that mission is to love the unloved. Go and find people like yourself and love them. They will know that I love them through your love for them. The voice said, I don't really care how people worship me. In fact, I don't even care if someone even knows or believes that I exist. The thing that matters is that you love one another. When you love another person, you're loving me. So go back and teach them. And I was given 6 words to come back and discuss and spread. The currency of eternity is love. It wasn't just the words, it was the whole meaning of that. Currency in human terms is we have a bill, it's a $20 bill, and it only has value because the people who exchange it for goods, it's like a mutual contract, a public contract that this is its value and it's a means of exchange. But if we didn't assign it value, it wouldn't have any value. Likewise, God doesn't assign value to money or power or fame or monuments that we may build. The thing that God values is love, that we love one another. That is the only thing that we contribute to this world that has an ultimate value. It's the things that we do because we love one another. The love that we have should transform us, our character, our being, so that the things that we say and do, rather than being manipulative and controlling, they should be loving and giving and supportive and helpful. You live that love. And Christianity has an example of Jesus the Christ who loves his followers so much that he gives his life for them. What an example. Love ultimately means we give something of ourselves for someone else. We're willing to sacrifice our time, our money, our energy, our life essence to another person or even the earth because we love them. We love them. And that love can heal And it's love is a lot more powerful than what we give it credit for. And the love is eternal. So that's the last part of it. You can build the pyramids of Giza and they'll last for 7 to 10,000 years, but eventually they go away. They aren't remembered anymore. But the love that we have in this world lasts forever. Lasts forever. I'm taught or told to bring that message back. So I'm given this mission. So you're going back now. You're going to be in your body. You're going to have a recovery. I went back to my body. I was put in a coma medically, so I would have a chance to heal. So my lungs would have a chance to heal. My body would have a chance to heal. But while I was in that state, I pictured myself being in a room. So like my near death experience went from there to another space of being in a room with a mirror on one side. There's a desk there. There's a document on the desk. And every now and then I would be talked to from someone on the other side of that mirror. I think at this point it was just angels or someone who was just on the other side of the veil who would talk to me. So I, would freak out being there by myself. You're alive. You're okay. Take a look at the desk. And eventually I go and I look at this document. And I've talked in other videos about it being my soul contract. And it sounds like I'm signing at some new contract. But whatever it is it's a story of my life. I know that I missed my purpose. And it took that experience to give myself finally permission to live my life. I actually had thoughts in my head before where I had heard God's voice. I had heard that voice before in my life that had told me what to do. and I I never followed it. I always rejected it. It was like finally I had to be taken out of this world, brought into the next, and hey, you really are meant to do this. This is your purpose. This is who you are. It's okay. You don't have to be afraid. Go and be yourself. Love yourself. For the rest of my life, that's the rest of this agreement is this right here. What you and I are doing. Just for me to tell the story, for me to share that the ultimate thing of value that God values is our love for one another, for our neighbors, for everyone that we see, and really for the entire earth and its beings. It's more cosmic than just love for other human beings, but we got to start somewhere. So let's start with one another. Then maybe we can expand that out a little bit. But we got to start there.
Couple things I want to clarify.
Okay.
How much is when I listen to your story, of course, I've listened to other interviews, everything we've talked about today. One thing you did not bring up was a previous claim that you had chosen to be trans specifically before you were born. So I guess to start it off, where did you see, like how did you have this pre-birth experience? Or am I getting anything wrong?
No, I see this is my life contract. And it's not that I had a preborn experience that I can recall. My understanding is that this was my life contract that I had agreed to before I took this life. And that's what it was. It wasn't that I had a memory of before I was created in human form that I agreed to be transgender, but apparently I had because I had agreed to this life. And I chose again now to live the life fully.
Okay. And how much because I don't want to take you out of context, right? This is kind
No,
of
it's
why
a
th-
it's okay. Some people are really interested in that life contract, and for me, it's like it's a mystery. I don't um
well, life is certainly a mystery, but I
yeah,
just I
yeah,
want to
it's like
ask
I
the
don't
clarifying.
100% understand what that thing is or was. The best thing that I can explain it as is an agreement that I had at the start of my life that I re-agreed to at this point in my life. And now I'm actually going through and living that out.
Okay. So
Does that
I
make
just
sense? I'm
I'm
trying to be clear with something that's
I'm trying
it's
to listen. I'm
I'm
trying.
not an expert in this. Oh, but I had that experience and it's like, okay, how do you talk about that?
Right. So what I want to do is I want to maintain, I want to remain integral on my side and yours. I don't want to
Okay.
put words in your mouth. Okay. So this is my
Absolutely,
it-
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
exactly because I have the respect. I want to make sure that I'm not accidentally taking you out of context. Right. So
Sure, sure.
whether it was you chose to be, trans before you were born, you're under the impression you had some sort of soul contract. That's a very interesting conversation.
Correct.
My
Yeah.
next question is the following. When I listen to your story, I wonder, it seems as though you're directly correlating your near death experience with your decision to be trans and whatever that means to you. Is that fair to say that you think it directly correlates to begin with?
100%. If I didn't have that experience, perhaps I would have transitioned, but I don't know. Um,
It's
I can't
just
really speculate
because
because it didn't happen. But what you see, I had so much fear and shame, and that took that away. I don't you see that whole burden that I had been feeling that was all knotted up inside of me now was gone. It was released. I didn't have the fear anymore. I didn't have the despair. I didn't have the self-loathing any longer. And in place of the things that I had chosen for myself to try to look like I'm some kind of a saintly person, um, is just to be myself. Just love myself enough just to allow myself to be myself. So what I am here, it's not a construct. It's not me having a vision of like this is the person that I want to become. It's just having the chance to be myself naturally. This is who I am, and it took that experience for me to release my facade, right? All the layers and things that I had built up to protect myself from who knows what at this point. All that this crap that I had built up in my heart and in my mind, that was the stress that I was living with that made me feel like I would be better off dead than living.
I understand, and I'm happy that you found peace and however you want to live your life is one thing. I'm genuinely curious.
Okay.
The reason that you do these interviews, on a level of importance, what is the main part of your message? Is it about the near death experience or is it about all the reasons that you're trans? Because to be fair, and I'm saying this with respect, to be fair, you spend about 95% of the time talking about the other stuff, which is perfectly fine. But it leads me to believe that's really the core of your message is being trans in this whole thing. Which, if you want to have that conversation, we can have that conversation. I'm just very curious what it has to do with the near death experience.
The core of the message is we're all going to die, and life is short.
Very true.
It's too short to live in fear. It's too short to live with someone else's up to someone else's expect. It's too short for us to project what we think other people will think about ourselves if we follow some course in our life. We should just forget that and be the best me and you that we can be. And we can know that who that person is, God loves that person. God loves me and accepts me. God also loves other people like myself who have the same kinds of struggles that I had. And the reason I spend all that time talking about it is because there's other folks that have had and are having similar struggles to myself as I had, and they're not alone. They're not alone. I've been there. And the I'll just say church religion in some quarters, not all, has taught that people who live their lives like I do goes against God, goes against natural law, goes against morals. It's immoral for me to transition and live as Kailey. God didn't impose that morality on humanity. Humanity came up with that on its own. God loves us for who we are. That's the message. And so, someone who has been hurt by church or by religious family members who think they're going to burn in eternity because if they were to transition, or that they would do it just for being who they are, can be free of that because they are in fact loved by God. They will spend eternity with God and the saints in heaven and heavenly bliss. I mean, that's framing it in a Christian framework. That I mean, really, my framework is broader than that at this point. But that just seems to be our cultural framework right now, and that some of the listeners may be operating out of. And so I speak to it that way. And certainly to the people that I'm speaking to that have gender dysphoria, who are trans, who may not have come out yet because of their fear, because of what they think the family will think, because of the church, all of those things that would bind them to stay in the closet. They can be free of all that because they're still loved. That's that's the message. And I really hope it comes through. And that's why I do spend a lot of time on that other part, because if I didn't have the experience, I wouldn't have experienced the release. And I had to be released from what I was feeling before.
I think there is a mutual ground where I actually agree that, okay, you teach a child that you're going to burn in hell for committing sins. I know you said before the show that you've never watched my show. Personally, I would never run my operation that way, but no big deal. I'm not offended by that. But I had the conversation recently. What does this do to people psychologically? These children are literally imagining themselves burning in hell. This is messing these kids up. We can agree on that for sure. So I think there's a part of your message where you're trying to spread the love, which is great. It just seems that it's very much about you being trans and the reason. My question is this: is there a part of it where you use your near-death experience as like a need to justify your decisions? Because at the end of the day, you don't need to justify your decisions. This is
Sure.
my interpretation. Perhaps I'm wrong.
Okay. No, I don't have to. Nobody has to justify it. It's not just me. This my being here is being visible, and visibility shows someone that they're not alone. That's a piece of it. Now, I'm trans, so that seems to be what my story is. But the lesson from it can be applied to almost anything. If it has been your dream to communicate these stories to people for whatever your motivation is, and you had some reason that you didn't do it, why don't you do it? And you are. I think that many people live lives that they put themselves in a prison of their own making. And it doesn't have to be about gender. I mean, it could be someone's gay or lesbian. I mean, like it could be that. It could be something else. It doesn't have to be the sexuality, but those are things that I relate to. That's a community that I'm a part of. So I tend to talk about it, right? But this could be opening your own business, right? I mean, I'm struggling to try to open my own business. It's my dream. Now, do I feel like it's my created purpose to do this business? Well, I feel like my creative purpose is to just be, and to
So
love other people, and to love other people. Um,
you
and
bring up a
really, everything else will take care of itself.
You bring up a fair point. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you saying, let me talk to the people that are trans. Let me talk to the other LGBT, whatever it is. There's nothing wrong with doing that.
Sure.
It's been made clear a large part of your life story and the struggles in your life are about being trans. The desire to be a woman, living as a woman now. So naturally, and I hope you're not, take this the wrong way, but I have a couple questions about this. I would like to have the conversation. Um,
Okay.
so what is it in your mind? What is it to be a woman? Like, how much does this have to do with clothing, fashion, makeup?